Hello and welcome to a special talking shop on HEXUS channel. I'm talking to Scott Richards, who's the Senior VP at Antec. Hi Scott.
Hi Scott, good to see you again.
You too. And so you're in town this time because you're on a tour talking about Antec itself and talking about some new products, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We've been in Tokyo, Seoul, Munich, Madrid, Paris, and now here to London to talk about not only our new products for the fall and early next year, but also to give some of the journalists out there and other people that might be interested a little bit of the background and the philosophy of Antec, who we are, what we're doing, and you know what's behind our products.
Okay, so why don't we start with that? Tell us a bit more about the Antec philosophy.
So we've dubbed it value, innovation, and perfection. And we think that all Antec products, to some greater or lesser degree, share those three attributes, and the VIP at the end of the chain, the consumer, is the one who benefits from it.
Okay, and something that always interests me about your area of products, which is primarily, correct me if I'm wrong, chassis, power supplies, and notebook accessories.
And cooling products.
And cooling products, there we go. It's, for your average consumer, it's not that easy to differentiate, let's say, between two different power supply units. They just look like big black boxes with tons of wires coming out of them. But there's obviously an awful lot of complicated stuff that goes on in there. How do you find, how easy is it to market these things to the sort of general population?
Well, you know, that is one of those kind of mystery boxes for people, right? I mean, you know, you buy a television set and all the stuff in the back behind the screen are a great mystery to you, but at least you can look at the picture and you can say, oh, well, that one looks good and that one doesn't look so good. So you have some way of discerning what's good and what's bad. Power supply, it's a black box or a green box or a aluminum box or what have you to people, and what's on the inside and what makes it go is, as you say, a mystery to people. And so part of what we're trying to do on this tour is raise the level of awareness about the things that matter and to educate end users via the journalists that we're talking to that there really are differences, and we're hoping that and what those differences are and what difference what impact it can have on the performance or the safety or what have you of their computing experience, because our belief is if we educate consumers, that at the end of the day will be the beneficiary, because a wiser consumer will be more likely to choose Antec.
Okay, so let's assume quite rightly that I don't know what constitutes a better or worse PSU. What are the key sort of factors or metrics I should be looking for?
Well, okay, one perfectly obvious example is the continuous rated output. Unfortunately, a lot of our competition still use what's called peak power, and this is a little bit nebulous, but if you think for a moment, think of a person shouting. You can talk at this level for so long, and then you go, wow, you know, as some loud gesticulation. That's a difference between peak power and continuous power. Our power supplies, if we say it's a 500 watt power supply, it can deliver 500 watt continuous during the entire duty cycle of the power supply, if so required. Other companies will market a 400 or 410 or what have you watt power supply, but it can deliver 500 watts for an instantaneous peak. So maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds. And they go ahead and sustain it. But not sustain it, that's right. And then they decide that's their model number. So it's model number XX500. Therefore, consumers think they're getting one thing, but in reality they're getting something different. And there are ways for people to verify this. You can go, for example, to Underwriters Laboratory in the United States, is the company that insurance companies use to make sure that everything is, you know, spot on, sort of like CE in Europe. And you'll see all the power supplies listed, but most consumers can't, you know, go through all that. So it's very difficult. But we just want people to know, you know, buyer beware. But at least Antec, you can guarantee that if we say it's 350 watt, if we say it's 1,000 watt, it is continuous power.
And it seems that you're taking a bit of a risk there, because if your competitors, some of your competitors, are marketing on peak, they're going to be able to deliver this higher metric to people, and people who don't know any better might think, well, I'm getting better value for money here because this is a bigger number at the same price. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why we want to educate people on this matter, so that they have a bit of skepticism, that they look a little bit closer, and again, when they find that out, then hopefully they'll choose us. Okay. And another metric I've seen associated with power supply units is 80 plus.
which I believe is a measure of the efficiency of the power supply.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that system?
Yeah, not to get too detailed, but 80 Plus was started by American energy providers, or North American, I should say, because some Canadian ones were involved too. And the idea was that all these computing farms, server farms all over the world are sucking up more and more of energy from the energy grid. And if they could get even incremental improvements in the efficiency of power supplies, in other words, a power supply takes the, I don't want to get too technical, power supply takes the AC signal from your wall and turns it into DC, which is what your computer or actually any electronic device in your house needs to use. In that conversion, there is some loss of power which gets burned off as heat. So if you say you have 100 watts being used at 50% efficiency, that means it takes 200 watts from the wall to produce 100 watts inside the machine. So the more efficiency you have, the more power you can use inside your machine and not waste the power from the wall. So if you had 80% efficiency, which was the goal of 80 Plus in the example that I just made, every incremental improvement in each individual power supply can make a huge improvement in terms of the demand on the total electrical grid.
And for me as a consumer, I care primarily because it saves me on my electricity bill?
That's one reason. Is it also, you can feel better about yourself because you're using environmentally friendly products. And if you're a business owner and you have lots of PCs, it can make a huge difference. I mean, think of the difference between a 70% efficient and an 80% efficient power supply. I mean, that's really 15% more efficient. Running all the time. And now 80 Plus goes all the way up to gold, which is starting to touch 90% efficient at some power levels. So that's very, very efficient.
And in terms of consumer protection, there's, as you said, there's this third party that sort of judges whether or not something is 80 Plus or silver or gold or whatever.
Yeah, they independently test the power supply. The power supplies are submitted by the manufacturer. There's a website, www.80plus80plus.org, and consumers can see exactly what level the power supplies reached, and they list them by manufacturer there.
Okay, thanks for that. We've got some good ideas of sort of metrics to look for in terms of buying PSUs. And for you guys specifically on this tour, are there any particular sort of innovations that you're talking about in this area?
Well, it's not an innovation per se, but it's something that another area we want to educate consumers, and that's a circuit called overcurrent protection. There's different circuits on the power supply that protect the power supply in case of a short circuit or a short circuit in the system, also protect the system, and ultimately, maybe even protect, somebody's home or business.
You got me all worried about my PC at home.
And they're over current protection, over voltage protection, over power protection, and we build all those into all of our power supplies. Lately, Antec's a little bit concerned, and we want to educate consumers that a lot of our competitors have been leaving overcurrent protection off of their power supply designs, and this creates a potentially dangerous situation. It's sort of like not having a circuit breaker or fuses in your home wiring. You could go years without ever having a problem, but when it does happen, you're awfully glad you have that protection there.
Insurance.
And astoundingly, some of our competitors put the OCP on the 3 volt and the 5 volt rail of the power supplies, where the amperage draw is very low, but leave it out on the 12 volt, where on some of these single rail designs, they're running almost 80 amps on the 12 volt rail without protecting it with OCP. And I'm not here to justify the competitors' designs. They can talk about the decisions that they made. What I'm here to educate and to talk about is the fact that all Antec power supplies have OCP on all their rails, 12 volt, 3 volt, 5 volt, every design. Our new Signature 1200, for example, has 8 12 volt rails, all protected with OCP.
Okay, and does this have, are there any drawbacks to OCP, for example, with efficiency?
Well, again, I don't want to impugn on anybody, but we do feel that OCP can drop a point or two of efficiency away from the design by having it in the circuit, and that maybe some people are tempted to leave it out because they can get a higher 80 plus rating, maybe go from bronze to silver or what have you by not having OCP.
But you don't think it's worth it? You're prepared to lose that?
No, we're prepared to lose it. We believe in OCP. We think it's necessary. We think customers, when they know about it, that they'll think it's necessary too.
Okay, thanks a lot, Scott. So I was talking to Scott Richards, Senior VP at Antec. Check back soon for more from the Antec UK Press Tour.